Admiral Jake Morrison stood at the command center of the Deep Space Monitoring Station floating near Neptune. The cold darkness of space stretched out before him, dotted with distant stars. He had been watching the void for 15 years, waiting for something that might never come. Today, that something finally arrived. Lieutenant Amy Davis turned from her communication console, her face pale. "Sir, we're getting a signal from beyond the solar system. It's not from any of our deep space probes." Jake walked over to her station. The signal was strong and clear, much stronger than anything humans had ever detected from space. "Can you decode it?" Amy nodded, her fingers dancing across the controls. "It's coming through in multiple languages: English, Chinese, Russian, Arabic. Whoever sent this knows about Earth." The message began playing through the speakers. The voice was cold and mechanical, speaking perfect English with no emotion. "People of the third planet of Sol system, this is the Galactic Council. Your world has been selected for integration into our empire. You will surrender all military forces and prepare for relocation. Resistance will result in complete destruction of your species." Jake felt his blood run cold. This was not the peaceful first contact that scientists had dreamed about for decades. Amy looked at him with wide eyes. "Sir, there's more." The message continued. "You have 72 hours to respond with complete acceptance of our terms. Failure to comply will result in corrective measures. Your primitive weapons cannot harm our vessels. Submit now and some of your people will survive as workers in our colonies." The transmission ended with coordinates and technical data that made no sense to human eyes. Jake grabbed the emergency phone that connected directly to Earth Command. "This is Morrison. Get me President Hayes immediately. We have a situation." Meanwhile, on Earth, Dr. Lisa Parker was working late in her laboratory at the University of California. She was one of the world's best experts in languages, including computer languages and theoretical alien communication. When the call came from Space Command, she dropped everything and rushed to the emergency meeting in Washington. The White House Situation Room was packed with the most important people in America. President Daniel Hayes sat at the head of the table, his face showing the stress of the moment. Defense Secretary Robert Clark was studying satellite images on his tablet. NASA Director Karen White was on a video call with space stations around the solar system. "Dr. Parker," President Hayes said as she entered the room, "we need to know everything about this message. Is it real?" Lisa sat down and opened her laptop. "Mr. President, I've analyzed the signal. It's definitely from outside our solar system. The technology needed to send such a clear message across interstellar space is far beyond what humans can do. The language patterns suggest a computer translation, but the grammar is too perfect. They've been studying us for a long time." Robert Clark leaned forward. "What about the threat? Are they serious about destroying us?" Lisa pulled up another file on her computer. "There's more to the message than what we heard first. Hidden in the data are images and video files. They show other planets, other civilizations." She paused, her voice getting quiet. "All destroyed." The room fell silent as Lisa played the hidden videos. World after world appeared on the screen. Once green and full of life, now nothing but burned rock floating in space. Cities that once held millions of people were now craters of melted glass. "These are examples," Lisa explained. "Other species that refused to surrender to the Galactic Council. According to the data, they gave each world the same 72-hour warning we just received." NASA Director Karen White spoke from the video screen. "Our deep space telescopes are picking up movement at the edge of the solar system. Something big is coming our way." President Hayes turned to his military advisor. "Robert, what are our options?" Robert Clark looked at the papers in front of him. "Mr. President, if these aliens have the technology to travel between stars and destroy entire planets, our conventional military forces won't be much help. But we do have other options." "Such as?" "Our nuclear arsenal. If they think we're primitive, they might not expect us to have weapons that can damage their ships. We've got enough nuclear missiles to turn any invasion force into radioactive dust." Dr. Parker shook her head. I don't think they're planning to invade, at least not right away. According to the data they sent, their usual method is to destroy most of the planet's military and major cities, then land to collect survivors for slave labor. President Hayes stood up and walked to the window. Outside, Washington looked peaceful and normal. People were going about their daily lives not knowing that humanity might have only 3 days left to live as a free species. "How many ships are we talking about?" he asked. Karen White checked her instruments. "The objects approaching our solar system are huge. At least 50 vessels, each one larger than our biggest aircraft carriers. They'll reach Earth's orbit in about 60 hours. The president turned back to his advisors. "Gentlemen, ladies, we have a choice to make. We can surrender and hope they treat us well as slaves, or we can fight and probably die. What do you recommend?" Robert Clark was the first to speak. "Mr. President, Americans don't surrender to bullies. We never have, and we shouldn't start now." Lisa Parker added, "The historical data they sent shows that surrendering doesn't guarantee survival. Most of the civilizations that gave up peacefully were still mostly destroyed. The Council seems to view other species as resources to be harvested, not people to be protected." President Hayes nodded slowly. "Then we fight. Robert, I want you to coordinate with our allies. If we're going to make a stand, we need every weapon we can get." "What about evacuation?" Karen White asked. "Should we try to get people off the planet? Where would they go?" The president replied. "If these aliens control the galaxy, there's nowhere to run. Our best chance is to make them understand that conquering Earth will cost them more than it's worth." As the meeting broke up, Admiral Morrison's voice came through the communication system. "Mr. President, we're detecting more signals from the alien fleet. They're broadcasting on all frequencies, showing the same destruction videos to every nation on Earth. They want everyone to know what happens to worlds that resist." President Hayes picked up the microphone. "Admiral Morrison, I want you to coordinate with all our space assets. Monitor everything those ships do. If they make any aggressive moves before the 72 hours are up, I want to know immediately." "Understood, Mr. President." As night fell over Washington, President Hayes stood alone in the Oval Office looking up at the stars. Somewhere out there, an alien fleet was approaching with the power to end human civilization. In less than 3 days, humanity would give its answer to the Galactic Council. He picked up his phone and called the Secretary of Defense. "Robert, start making the calls. I want every nuclear weapon on Earth ready to launch. If they want a war, we'll give them one they'll never forget." Deep underground in the NORAD Command Center, General Patricia Stone studied the radar screens showing the alien fleet's approach. The massive ships moved in perfect formation, like a parade of death heading straight for Earth. Her tactical team worked around the clock analyzing every detail of the enemy vessels. Colonel Mike Rodriguez pointed to the display. "General, they're not trying to hide. These ships are broadcasting their position on every frequency. They want us to see them coming." Major Susan Taylor looked up from her computer. "It's psychological warfare. They're trying to make us panic and surrender before they even arrive." General Stone nodded. "What they don't understand is that humans don't panic the way they expect. We get angry." She turned to her communications officer. "Get me the president." In the White House, President Hayes was meeting with leaders from around the world via secure video links. The British Prime Minister, the Russian President, the Chinese Premier, and dozens of other world leaders filled the screens in the Situation Room. "The question before us is simple," President Hayes said to the assembled leaders. "Do we surrender to these aliens or do we fight back?" The Russian president spoke first. "My country has faced many invaders over the centuries. We have never surrendered to bullies, and we will not start now. Russia's nuclear forces are at your disposal." The Chinese premier nodded. "China agrees. We will not bow to these creatures who think they can treat humans like animals." One by one, every world leader pledged their nation's weapons to the common defense. Even countries that had been enemies for decades put aside their differences to face the alien threat together. Dr. Alan Brooks, head of Earth's most secret nuclear weapons program, entered the Situation Room carrying a thick briefcase. He was a quiet man who had spent 30 years designing weapons that could end civilizations. Now those weapons might be humanity's only hope. Mr. President, Dr. Brooks said, I've been reviewing the alien fleet data with my team. Their ships are large and powerful, but they have one weakness. They're overconfident. President Hayes leaned forward. Explain. They're approaching Earth like they own it already. Their formation is designed to look impressive, not to defend against attack. If we hit them hard and fast, we can do serious damage before they realize what's happening. Defense Secretary Robert Clark studied the tactical displays. What are you proposing? Dr. Brooks opened his briefcase and pulled out a set of plans. Operation Sunrise. We coordinate every nuclear weapon on Earth to launch simultaneously, not to destroy the alien fleet, but to send them a message they can't ignore. A demonstration, General Stone said, understanding immediately. Show them what we're capable of without actually starting a war. Exactly. We detonate our weapons in a pattern around their fleet, close enough to damage their electronics and get their attention, but not close enough to destroy them. Then we send them our own message. President Hayes looked at the faces on the video screens. What do you think? Are we all agreed on this plan? The world leaders voted one by one. Within an hour, every nuclear power on Earth had agreed to coordinate their weapons for humanity's first and possibly last diplomatic message to an alien civilization. Captain Ryan Kelly commanded the ballistic missile submarine USS Defiance, hidden deep beneath the Pacific Ocean. He had served in the Navy for 20 years, but nothing had prepared him for the orders he received that morning. All stations, this is the captain, he announced over the ship's intercom. We have received orders directly from the President of the United States. In 18 hours, we will launch our missiles not at any target on Earth, but at alien invaders who threaten our planet. The submarine's crew had been following the news about the alien contact, but hearing it from their captain made it real. They were about to make history by firing the first shots in humanity's war with an alien empire. Lieutenant Commander Helen Carter worked with communication teams around the world to synchronize the global response. Every missile launch had to happen at exactly the same moment, or the demonstration would fail. Russian submarine Typhoon reports ready, she announced to the command center. British Vanguard class is in position. Chinese Type 094 is standing by. Similar reports came in from land-based missile sites on every continent. American Minuteman missiles in their underground silos, Russian Topol systems hidden in forests, Chinese DF-41s on mobile launchers, French M51s in their submarines, and dozens of other nuclear systems, all waited for the same signal. Dr. Brooks worked with international teams to calculate the exact timing. The nuclear weapons had to detonate in a specific pattern around the alien fleet, creating a light show that would be visible from multiple star systems while demonstrating Earth's destructive capabilities. The electromagnetic pulse from our weapons will temporarily disable their ship systems, he explained to President Hayes. It won't destroy them, but it will show them that our primitive weapons can affect their technology. As the 72-hour deadline approached, President Hayes prepared humanity's response to the Galactic Council. He stood in the Oval Office, with cameras broadcasting his message to every nation on Earth and to the alien fleet approaching their world. To the Galactic Council, he began, his voice calm but firm. Humanity has received your ultimatum. We have considered your terms carefully. Our response is simple. Earth declines your generous offer of slavery. The President paused, looking directly into the camera. We understand that you view us as a primitive species with primitive weapons. You are correct that we are young compared to your galactic empire. But you have made one critical error in your assessment of humanity. You assume that because our technology is simpler than yours, we are weaker than you. This is not true. Humans have spent thousands of years learning how to fight, and we have become very good at it. Our weapons may be primitive, but they are also very, very dangerous. President Hayes smiled, and for a moment he looked less like a world leader, and more like a predator showing its teeth. Please observe the attached demonstration of our diplomatic philosophy. After you have seen what we are capable of, we would be happy to discuss a more reasonable relationship between our species. The transmission ended with coordinates for the demonstration and a countdown timer showing exactly when humanity's message would be delivered. Across the world, missile crews prepared to launch the most important salvo in human history. Captain Kelly looked at his watch. All stations, prepare for missile launch. Target coordinates are loaded. We launch in 60 seconds. Similar preparations were happening on submarines, missile silos, and mobile launchers around the globe. Thousands of nuclear weapons pointed not at Earth but at the space around an alien fleet that had come to conquer humanity. 10 seconds, Captain Kelly announced. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Launch all missiles. Deep in the ocean, ballistic. Missiles broke the surface and roared into space, carrying humanity's answer to the Galactic Council. Admiral Zektar of the Galactic Council fleet watched the small objects rising from the third planet with amusement. His species had conquered over 300 worlds, and primitive species always tried the same desperate tactics. They would throw their simple weapons at superior technology, hoping against hope that somehow they could hurt the mighty Council fleet. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, "the primitive missiles are approaching our outer perimeter. Should we destroy them?" Zektar waved a dismissive hand. "Let them come. When their pathetic weapons bounce harmlessly off our shields, they will understand the futility of resistance. Record everything so we can broadcast their failure to the planet below." The alien admiral had no idea that he was about to witness something that had never happened before in the long history of the Galactic Council. No primitive species had ever possessed weapons that could actually threaten Council forces. Earth was about to change that assumption forever. On Earth, Dr. Brooks watched the missile trajectories from mission control. Every weapon was flying, exactly where it needed to go. The timing had to be perfect for the demonstration to work properly. "First wave approaching target zone," reported Major Taylor. "All missiles are on course." Captain Kelly's submarine-launched ballistic missiles were the first to reach the alien fleet. The warheads separated from their delivery vehicles and began their final approach to the predetermined detonation points. Each missile carried multiple nuclear warheads, and each warhead was programmed to explode at exactly the right moment. Detonation. "In 10 seconds, Dr. Brooks announced to the command centers around the world. Admiral Zektar was studying reports from other conquered worlds when the first nuclear weapon exploded. The brilliant flash of light was visible through the thick armor of his flagship, and the electromagnetic pulse made every instrument on the bridge flicker. "What was that?" he demanded. Before his crew could answer, dozens more nuclear explosions erupted around the Council fleet. The space around the alien ships turned into a brilliant display of destructive energy that could be seen from Earth without telescopes. The electromagnetic pulses from the nuclear weapons washed over the alien vessels like invisible waves. Ship systems flickered and failed as the energy overloaded their electronics. Several smaller vessels lost power completely and began drifting helplessly through space. "Sir, our shields are fluctuating," the tactical officer reported, his voice now much less confident than before. "The primitive weapons are generating massive electromagnetic interference." Admiral Zektar stared at the displays showing his fleet. For the first time in his career, primitive weapons had actually affected Council ships. It should have been impossible, but the evidence was right in front of his eyes. "How many missiles did they launch?" he asked. "Over 400 nuclear warheads, sir. All detonated in coordinated patterns around our fleet." The admiral felt something he had never experienced before when dealing with primitive species. Concern. These humans had demonstrated that their weapons could reach Council ships and cause damage. If this was just a warning, what would happen if they launched a real attack? On Earth, President Hayes watched the demonstration from the White House Situation Room. The nuclear explosions created a light show that was visible to every telescope. On the planet, more importantly, the alien ships were clearly affected by the electromagnetic pulses. "Dr. Parker," the president said to the linguist, "send them our message." Lisa Parker activated the transmission system that would broadcast humanity's response on every frequency the aliens had been using. She had spent hours writing the message, trying to find words that would make the aliens understand Earth's position without starting a war. "Greetings to the Galactic Council fleet," she began. speaking in the alien language that had been included in their original transmission. Humanity has received your ultimatum and respectfully declines your terms. The message continued in 17 different languages, including several alien tongues that Dr. Parker had decoded from the Council's databases. The demonstration you have just witnessed represents a small fraction of Earth's defensive capabilities. We possess over 15,000 nuclear weapons, each one capable of generating the electromagnetic pulse you just experienced. Admiral Zektar listened to the transmission with growing alarm. 15,000 nuclear weapons? His intelligence reports had estimated that the primitive humans possessed maybe a few dozen simple atomic bombs. How had they hidden such a massive arsenal? Furthermore, the human message continued, our weapons can be delivered by submarines that your sensors cannot detect, by land-based missiles that can launch within minutes, and by aircraft that can penetrate your defensive systems. If you choose to attack Earth, we will respond with the full power of our nuclear arsenal. The transmission ended with technical specifications that made Admiral Zektar's officers gasp in surprise. The humans had somehow developed hydrogen bombs with yields far greater than anything in the Council's primitive weapons database. Sir, his science officer reported, according to these specifications, their largest weapons could destroy our flagship with a single direct hit. Admiral Zektar had spent his entire career conquering worlds that begged for mercy. He had never encountered a species that responded to overwhelming force with a demonstration of their own destructive power. These humans were either completely insane or far more dangerous than anyone had realized. Major Taylor coordinated with observatories around the world to make sure the alien fleet could see Earth's full military capabilities. Every radar station, every satellite, and every deep space telescope was focused on the Council ships, showing them that humans were watching their every move. The aliens are holding position, she reported to General Stone. They're not advancing toward Earth, but they're not retreating either. General Stone studied the tactical displays. They're confused. They came here expecting to intimidate a primitive species, and instead, they got a face full of nuclear fire. They need time to figure out what to do next. The demonstration had accomplished exactly what President Hayes hoped. The alien fleet was no longer treating Earth as an easy target. The Council ships maintained their distance while their commanders tried to understand how a primitive species had developed weapons that could threaten their technology. Dr. Brooks monitored the electromagnetic radiation coming from the alien vessels. Their ship systems are still recovering from the pulse effects. Some of their smaller ships won't have full power for several hours. Captain Kelly's submarine remained hidden beneath the Pacific, ready to launch another salvo if the aliens made any aggressive moves. Similar submarines and missile systems around the world waited for orders, their crews knowing that humanity's survival might depend on their quick response. Captain, Lieutenant Commander Carter reported, we're receiving new orders from Earth. Command, all weapon systems are to remain on maximum alert. If the alien fleet advances within 1 million kilometers of Earth, we have authorization to launch a full nuclear strike. Captain Kelly nodded. The demonstration had been humanity's opening move in a deadly game of interstellar diplomacy. Now, they would have to wait and see how the Galactic Council chose to respond to Earth's message. In space, Admiral Zektar faced a decision that no Council commander had ever confronted before. He could order an attack on Earth and probably win, but the cost would be enormous. These humans had proven they could damage Council ships, and they claimed to have thousands more weapons ready to launch. Or he could do something that went against every principle of Council military doctrine. He could negotiate with the primitives, as if they were equals. The electromagnetic interference from the human weapons was finally fading, and his fleet systems were returning to normal. But Admiral Zektar knew that nothing would ever be normal again. The humans had changed the rules of the game, and the Galactic Council would never be the same. High Counselor Krendek received the emergency transmission from Admiral Zektar's fleet, while presiding over a routine meeting about trade regulations on the Outer Rim worlds. The message was brief, but alarming. Primitive species Sol 3 has weapons, capable of damaging Council vessels, requesting immediate guidance. The High Counselor dismissed the other Council members and activated the emergency communication system. Within minutes, representatives from dozens of species appeared on holographic displays around the council chamber, all demanding to know what was happening at the edge of the galaxy. "Explain this report," demanded Councillor Vexnari of the Hegemony. "Worlds. How can primitives threaten council forces?" Krendak activated the recording that Admiral Zektar had transmitted along with his report. The council chamber fell silent as they watched hundreds of nuclear explosions erupting around the mighty council fleet. Several councillors gasped when they saw the electromagnetic effects causing council ship systems to fail. "This is impossible," whispered Councillor Mortick of the Industrial Coalition. "Our intelligence report stated that Sol 3 species possessed only basic chemical explosives." Council historian Velmata was already accessing the database entries for the Sol system. What she found made her want to hide under her desk. The last intelligence update on Earth was over 50 standard years old, and it classified humans as a recently emerged species with primitive nuclear capabilities. "Our information is outdated," she admitted to the assembled council. "The humans have been developing their weapons technology much faster than we predicted." High Councillor Krendak studied the tactical analysis that came with Admiral Zektar's report. The electromagnetic pulse effects alone were impressive, but the humans claimed to possess 15,000 of these weapons. If even half of that number was accurate, they could potentially destroy the entire invasion fleet. "What is Admiral Zektar's current status?" asked Councillor Drakon of the Military Oversight Committee. "The fleet is maintaining position at a safe distance from Sol 3, Krendak replied. "All ships are operational, but several smaller vessels suffered temporary system failures from the electromagnetic pulse effects." The implications of this news spread through the council chamber like wildfire. For over 1,000 years, the Galactic Council had expanded its territory by intimidating primitive species into surrender. Their strategy was simple: show up with overwhelming force, demonstrate their superior technology, and watch the primitives beg for mercy. Earth had just shattered that strategy forever. "If word of this spreads to other species under council control," Councillor Vexnari said quietly, "we could face rebellions across the galaxy." That was exactly what High Councillor Krendak was afraid of. The council's power was based on the belief that resistance was futile. If primitive species learned that they could actually hurt council forces, the Empire could collapse within a generation. Meanwhile, in a secure bunker on Earth, Dr. Brooks was analyzing the electromagnetic signatures from the alien ships. The nuclear demonstration had provided valuable intelligence about council technology, and what he learned was both encouraging and terrifying. "General Stone," he reported to the NORAD Command Center, "the alien ships are more vulnerable to electromagnetic pulse than we expected. Our nuclear weapons can definitely damage their systems." "How much damage?" General Stone asked. "Enough to disable their smaller vessels completely. The larger ships seem to have better shielding, but they're still affected. If we hit them with our full arsenal, we could probably destroy half their fleet." General Stone nodded grimly. "And the other half would turn Earth into a cinder. What about their weapons? Did you learn anything about their offensive capabilities?" Dr. Brooks pulled up another display. "Their energy signatures suggest they use some kind of plasma-based weapon system. Very powerful, but it requires a lot of energy to charge. If we could hit them during their charge cycle, they'd be vulnerable." President Hayes listened to the briefing from the White House Situation Room. The nuclear demonstration had bought Earth some time, but he knew the aliens were probably planning their next move. The question was whether they would choose negotiation or escalation. "Dr. Parker," he said to the linguist, "any word from the alien fleet?" Lisa Parker shook her head. "They've gone silent on all communication frequencies, but our deep space monitors are detecting a lot of encrypted transmissions between their ships and somewhere beyond our solar system. They're talking to their bosses," Defense Secretary Clark observed, "asking for instructions on how to deal with us." The president walked to the window overlooking the White House lawn. Outside, life continued normally. People walked their dogs, children played in parks, and traffic moved through the streets. None of them knew that their planet's fate was being decided by alien council members in a distant part of the galaxy. Across the world, other leaders were preparing for the possibility of war. Russian submarines moved into position in the Arctic Ocean, their nuclear missiles ready to launch at a moment's notice. Chinese mobile missile launchers dispersed across the vast countryside, making them impossible for alien sensors to track all at once. Captain Kelly's submarine USS Defiance maintained its hidden position beneath the Pacific, monitoring alien communications and ready to launch another nuclear salvo if needed. His crew had performed flawlessly during the demonstration, and now they waited in tense silence for whatever came next. "Captain," Lieutenant Commander Carter reported, "we're detecting movement in the alien fleet. 3 of their larger ships are changing position." Captain Kelly studied the sonar displays. "Are they advancing on Earth?" "Negative, sir. They appear to be moving to a defensive formation. It looks like they're worried about another attack." The psychological effect of Earth's demonstration was exactly what President Hayes had hoped. 4. The aliens were now treating humanity as a serious threat instead of helpless primitives. For the first time in their history, a Council invasion fleet was adopting defensive tactics against a supposedly inferior species. High Counselor Krendak faced pressure from multiple directions. Military counselors demanded immediate retaliation against the impudent humans. Economic counselors worried about the cost of a prolonged war with a species that could actually fight back. Political counselors feared that other primitive worlds would learn about Earth's successful resistance. "We have 3 options," he announced to the emergency council session. "We can order Admiral Zektar to destroy Sol 3 immediately regardless of losses. We can withdraw the fleet and pretend this never happened. Or we can attempt to negotiate with the humans as equals." The council chamber erupted in debate. The idea of negotiating with primitives went against everything the council stood for, but the alternative was potentially losing a significant portion of their fleet to a species they had assumed would surrender without a fight. Councillor Velmata studied the tactical reports from the demonstration. "The humans showed remarkable restraint," she observed. "They could have targeted our ships directly, but chose to detonate their weapons at a safe distance. This suggests they prefer negotiation to warfare." "Or," countered Councillor Drakon, "it suggests they know they cannot win a direct confrontation and are trying to appear reasonable while preparing for a real attack." High Counselor Krendak considered both possibilities. The humans had demonstrated 2 things with their nuclear display. They possessed weapons that could damage council ships, and they were intelligent enough to avoid starting a war they couldn't win. "Admiral Zektar," he said into the communication system, "open a diplomatic channel with the Sol 3 species. We will attempt to negotiate a peaceful resolution to this situation." The Admiral's reply was immediate. "Understood, High Counselor. Should I maintain the fleet's current defensive position?" "Yes." "And Admiral, make it clear to your officers that any unauthorized attacks on SOL 3 will result in immediate court-martial. We cannot afford to escalate this conflict until we understand exactly what we're dealing with." On Earth, monitoring stations detected the change in alien communication patterns within hours. The encrypted transmissions between the fleet and the Galactic Council had been replaced by attempts to establish diplomatic contact with Earth's governments. President Hayes smiled for the first time since the crisis began. Humanity's missile warning had accomplished something remarkable. It had forced an galactic empire to treat Earth as an equal partner, rather than a conquest target. The real negotiations were about to begin. President Hayes stood in the White House Communications Center, watching as technicians set up equipment for humanity's first formal diplomatic conversation with an alien civilization. The room buzzed with activity as linguists, military advisors, and diplomatic experts prepared for the most important negotiation in human history. Dr. Lisa Parker sat at the main communication console, her fingers dancing across controls that connected Earth to the Galactic Council fleet. After days of tense silence, the aliens had finally requested a diplomatic meeting. The tone of their message was completely different from their original ultimatum. "Mr. President," Dr. Parker said, "High Counselor Krendak is ready to begin the discussion." The main screen flickered to life, showing an alien figure that looked somewhat like a tall, thin human with blue-gray skin and large black eyes. When Krendak spoke, His voice was translated into perfect English by sophisticated alien technology. President Hayes of Earth, the High Counselor began. The Galactic Council extends greetings to your species. We wish to discuss the recent misunderstanding regarding our intentions toward your world. President Hayes smiled slightly at the aliens' careful choice of words. A few days ago, they had called it an ultimatum for immediate surrender. Now it was a misunderstanding. High Counselor, President Hayes replied, humanity appreciates the Council's willingness to engage in dialogue. We hope this conversation will lead to a more positive relationship between our species. What President Hayes didn't know was that similar conversations were happening in secret across the galaxy. The news of Earth's successful resistance had spread to other species under Council control, carried by traders, diplomats, and communication intercepts that the Council couldn't stop. On the mining world of Kepler 442b, the local population had gathered around primitive radio sets to listen to broadcasts about the human demonstration. For decades, they had been forced to provide raw materials to the Council, with no payment except the promise that they wouldn't be destroyed. Now, for the first time, they heard about a species that had said no to the Council and lived to tell about it. Did you hear? One miner whispered to his co-workers. The humans made the Council fleet retreat without firing a single shot at their planet. Similar conversations were taking place on dozens of worlds throughout the galaxy. Species that had accepted Council rule because they thought resistance was impossible began to wonder if they had other options. High Counselor Krendak was aware of these stirrings of rebellion, which made the negotiation with Earth even more critical. If the humans could be brought into the Council peacefully, it might prevent the Empire from collapsing. If the negotiations failed, and Earth had to be destroyed, it would prove to other species that resistance was ultimately futile. President Hayes, Krendak said carefully, the Council recognizes that our initial assessment of Earth's capabilities was incomplete. We propose a new arrangement that would benefit both our civilizations. We're listening, President Hayes replied. Rather than integration as a member species, we offer Earth full membership in the Galactic Council as an equal partner. Your world would have voting rights on all Council decisions and access to advanced technologies that would benefit your people. Dr. Parker translated the formal diplomatic language for the President through her earpiece. He's offering us something unprecedented. Full membership is usually only granted to species that have been part of the Council for centuries. President Hayes nodded but kept his expression neutral. That's a generous offer, High Counselor. What would the Council expect from Earth in return? Krendak paused, consulting with advisors that appeared as smaller images around his main display. The Council would appreciate Earth's assistance, with certain security challenges that have arisen in recent years, such as some species under Council protection have become influenced by radical ideas about independence and self-governance. They require guidance from a species with experience in military conflict resolution. President Hayes almost laughed out loud. The aliens wanted humanity to help them put down rebellions caused by Earth's own example of successful resistance. It was like asking the American revolutionaries to help the British Empire suppress other independence movements. I see, the President said diplomatically. And what makes the Council think that Earth would be effective in such situations? Your demonstration of military capability was impressive, Krendak admitted. Species that might ignore Council warnings would likely respond differently to human diplomatic efforts backed by your obvious willingness to use force. What the High Counselor didn't say was that several species had already sent secret messages to Earth, asking for advice on how to resist Council control. The humans had accidentally become a symbol of hope for oppressed civilizations across the galaxy. General Stone listened to the negotiation from the Pentagon, where she was coordinating with military leaders around the world. The aliens' offer was tempting, but she could see the trap. They wanted to use humanity's reputation as fighters to intimidate other species into submission. Mr. President, she said through the secure communication link, I recommend we make a counterproposal. President Hayes touched his earpiece to show he was listening while continuing to watch the alien diplomat on screen. Instead of helping the Council suppress rebellions, General Stone suggested, We offer to serve as mediators between the Council and species seeking greater autonomy. Earth could help negotiate peaceful solutions that benefit everyone. President Hayes smiled. Trust the military to find a way to turn the situation to humanity's advantage. High Counselor, President Hayes said, Earth appreciates the Council's offer of membership. However, we would prefer to serve as peacekeepers rather than enforcers. Our experience suggests that conflicts are best resolved through negotiation, backed by the implicit threat of force, not through actual violence. Krendak's large eyes blinked slowly as he considered this response. The human proposal was clever. If Earth served as a mediator, rebellious species might be satisfied with greater autonomy instead of complete independence. The Council would maintain control while avoiding costly wars. This arrangement would require Earth to develop significant military capabilities to serve as a credible deterrent, the High Counselor pointed out. We're prepared to do that, President Hayes replied. In fact, we've already begun expanding our defensive systems. This was true. In the days since first contact, every major power on Earth had begun crash programs to build more nuclear weapons, better delivery systems, and improved detection equipment. The alien threat had united humanity in a way that nothing else ever had. Admiral Morrison, still commanding the Deep Space Monitoring Station near Neptune, watched as the first joint human-alien patrol began. 3 Earth vessels, hastily equipped with alien communication equipment, flew alongside a small Council ship to monitor the edge of the solar system. Captain Kelly had been promoted to Admiral and given command of Earth's new interstellar defense force. His submarine experience made him ideal for the kind of hidden, mobile operations that Earth's strategy required. The aliens might have better technology, but humans had centuries of experience in asymmetric warfare. The negotiations continued for weeks, but the basic framework was established in that first conversation. Earth would join the Galactic Council as an equal member with special responsibility for maintaining peace through deterrence. Human military advisors would help other species develop defensive capabilities, while human diplomats would mediate disputes before they became wars. Most importantly, Earth's nuclear arsenal would serve as a guarantee that no species, including the Council itself, would ever again try to conquer another civilization through pure intimidation. Dr. Brooks found himself leading a joint human-alien research team developing new defensive technologies. The aliens provided advanced materials and energy systems, while humans contributed their expertise in designing weapons that could destroy almost anything. The irony is perfect, he told President Hayes during one of their regular briefings. We're using our talent for destruction to preserve peace across the galaxy. 6 months after first contact, Admiral Morrison watched from his command center as the largest fleet in human history departed for the Outer Rim territories. Earth ships equipped with nuclear weapons flew alongside alien vessels carrying advanced sensors and shields. Their mission was to respond to reports of aggressive expansion by a species that hadn't yet learned about humanity's new role in galactic affairs. It would be Earth's first opportunity to demonstrate that the galaxy's newest peacekeepers were serious about their job. President Hayes stood in the Oval Office, looking up at stars that no longer seemed distant and mysterious. Somewhere out there, human beings were serving alongside alien allies to protect civilizations from the kind of bullying that Earth itself had faced. Humanity's missile warning had evolved into something nobody could have predicted: a permanent, deterrent force that kept aggressive species in check while protecting smaller civilizations from conquest. Earth's greatest weakness, their capacity for violence, had become their greatest strength in maintaining galactic peace. The phone on his desk rang. It was Admiral Kelly calling from somewhere near the Andromeda system.